What's going on? What's going on? What's going on? Let's get right into it. All right. I'm seeing a lot of videos lately where people are talking about Earl Spence taking on Canelo Alvarez and fighting him at 160 pounds. And I guess I'm going to be in the minority. I'm going to be one of those people that I don't want to see that fight. I don't think that's a fight that should happen. Um, go through Canelo's career. We've seen him take on Shane Mosley, who came down from the lower weights, 130, 135. We've seen him take on an Amir Khan, who had been not stopped at 140 pounds, had been stopped by Prescott in the 130 or 135 pounds. Then you take on him at 155 pounds. And you stop him, another small guy. We've seen him take on Josecito Lopez, another guy, small, came from 140, came up to 147, had a victory against what the hell his name was, and then just one fight. Then all of a sudden he jumps all the way up to 100. Victor Ortiz. Then he jumps all the way up to 154 pounds to take on Canelo Alvarez. We've seen too many of these type of fights. We've seen Canelo was at 154 pounds when you had Demetrius Andres there. You had both Charlos there. You had Lara there. And for a long time, I refused to fight any of them. And I finally fought Lara. But that was it. All these other champions didn't want to fight them. But Demetrius Andres loses his belt. The second he loses his belt, all of a sudden, he wants to fight for that belt. Because of the lower tier competition is going to have to fight in order to get that fight. Moves up in weight at 160 pounds. At one point, he has 3 of the belts. Demetrius Andres is there, both on the zone. He could fight him from undisputed. Chooses not to fight him for undisputed. Doesn't do it. He goes up to 175 pounds, takes on a Kovalev, beats Kovalev. Cool. You got Beterbiev over there, who's the king of that division. Chooses not to face him. Doesn't do it. We've seen Benavidez have a 168-pound WBC title for a while. Canelo never made any kind of push to get that belt. But the second that belt drops, and I guess now he gets to get it, and then all of a sudden he wants to try to get it. Because he'd have to face lower tier competition to get it. Now he's at 168, taking on Smith. Cool. Then after that, I guess his next fight, he's supposed to actually fight that whoever that guy was. That's supposed to be the mandatory for the WBC. He's going to face that guy next, unfortunately. I thought he might have been facing other champions. And I was kind of I wanted to see what his moves exactly were going to be to see if he really was going to be pushing for undisputed but it doesn't seem like that's going to be the case. He's going to take on that lower tier dude for his first, for this next fight after this particular fight. And I just think that it's all these fighters that we wanted to have seen him fight that we didn't get to see fight. But then he says, hey, I want to fight that little guy over there. And everybody's just clamoring for it. Everybody's all hyped up and gassed up about it and trying to push it. And it's bullshit. It's bullshit. That man, what we should be clamoring for and pushing for is for him to face the guys that he was supposed to have faced to begin with. Earl Spence is good. Earl Spence, people keep saying, one of the things I'm hearing, well, it's going to be a huge money day. He's going to make so much money. Earl Spence is already making money. Whatever money he would have made in the Canelo fight, he's already made it. In his last 3 fights, just off the pay-per-views alone, over $100 million have been generated off the pay-per-views alone. Not including the gates, not including the concessions, not including the merch that they sold. Not whatever television rights he has, everything like that. The boy's made a killing. And within his next 2+ fights, whatever, especially probably in the next 2 fights, because he could probably fight Sean Porter next, and after they could fight Manny Pacquiao. So within the next 2 fights, he'll make substantially more than he will in a Canelo fight. So what's his clamoring for this man to jump up 2 weight classes? For what? He's the king of 147 pounds. He's able to do pay-per-views at 147 pounds, make good money off gates, make good money, off the pay-per-views, spies. He's been doing it. He could fight Canelo. He could fight Sean Porter. If Keith Thurman comes up with a win, if let's say he fights Ugas, he can fight the winner of that. He can fight Manny Pacquiao. If Crawford happens, great. But if Crawford doesn't happen, you got Ennis is coming up, building up his name is getting big. He could fight Ortiz Jr. right now and do numbers. Right now, he could fight Ortiz and do numbers. He has people he can face. He has the next 2 years plus carved out. But people are all hyped up and about him jumping up to 160 pounds to take on a guy that has been busted for the usage of clenbuterol. Like, how do y'all think that Canelo's going to get up from 168 back down to 160? How do y'all think he's going to actually get back down there? Canelo's cut up and shredded at 167 pounds. 170 pounds, he's shredded, cut up. We know the means that he's possibly going in order to get down to 160. It's not like Earl Spence is this whirlwind beater that's just destroying everything in his path. I could understand if he was doing to people at 147 what Gervonta Tank Davis is doing to people at 130 pounds, and he was doing it to all of them. Then I could understand, but that's not what's happening. He went 12 rounds against Mikey Garcia. He went 12 rounds against Danny Garcia. He had a close victory, a tight victory against Sean Porter. He's better than everybody at 147 pounds, but he's just a little bit better. Maybe 20% better. That's not going to cut it. He's not doing a Gennaro Hernandez versus Floyd Mayweather. He's not doing a Mayweather versus Diego Corrales. He's not doing a Mayweather He's not doing those type of things. Where Floyd could move up and because he's just light years above everybody else. That's not what the situation is. So for everybody to just continue pushing for this fight to happen is bullish. What we should be clamoring for and what we should be pushing for is for Canelo to fight the Charlo brothers. If Jamel moves up and he wants to fight Jamel, cool. If Jamal Charlo, the one that really deserves it, wants to come down to 160 fight Jamal Charlo, fine. And if he wants to stay up at 168 pounds, then we should be pushing for him to fight. Whether it be Billy Joe Saunders because he has a belt, that's fine if he can do that unification. But then take on the Caleb Plants, to take on the Benavidez. That's who we should be taking on. That's what we should be pushing to see him take on. Not the 147 pounder. He said no to all these guys who've been around him for all this time. But now he wants to fight the 147 pounder and everybody wants to be all hyped up and everybody wants to push for that. And I think it's bullish. I think the fight should be put up on his feet to face guys his own size, to take on those dudes. Earl Spence is good financially. He's good. Like he said, Earl Spence said he could retire today and he's good. So why are we going to put him into a space where he's taking on someone who we know is probably on ish, that's going to be way bigger than him? And you can say what you want. He already is not knocking guys out. You move up 2 weight classes, you're not going to have the same power up there as you do at 147 pounds. You're not. You're not going to have that. Why? And then is he going to stay up at that 160? No. He's going to have to come back down to what? To 154, to 147? I guess to 154. And then what's there for him? Jamel's run through that whole division. Jamel's probably pretty much going to be possibly undisputed next year. So what's he coming there for? To just not fight for belts? What's he going to do? Fight Charlo? What's the point of going up to 154 right now? Doesn't make any sense. There's no sense from Charlo to go up to 160. You see the issue his brother's having. So why would he go up to 160? For what? When he can reign and be king at 154 pounds. So, I know I'm going to be in the minority of this when it comes to this, but me personally, I think that fight is bullish. I don't think it's a fight that Spence needs. I don't think it's a fight that Spence should take. It's a fight where it's short-term gain because you might get that bread but end up losing your whole career. You might not end up being the same fighter after that. For what? You know? And Floyd Mayweather made most of his money when he was in his 30s. So how much you might look like it's big, but how much money could you really be losing in the back end for this in order to get this quote upfront money? When you're already good enough to retire right now, like you said. Makes no sense, man. To me personally. You know, I want to see Earl Spence dominate the 147-pound division for at least 2 more years. Because he can do it. He can make that weight as long as he's on point with everything. I want to see him dominate that for the next 2 years. And I want to see Canelo Alvarez take on those guys that we've been clamoring for him to take on for years. And he's never taken them on. Take on Plant. Take on Benavidez. Take on Charlo. Either one of them. Take on Demetrius Andres. If you're going to fight at 160, take on those guys. If not, it's all good. But I guess it is what it is, you know. I know I'm going to be the minority in this, but I want to put my opinion out there. And I think the pushing for this fight is bullish. But for now, like, subscribe, share. I'm out.